the Ethan Experience, the podcast. If you don't know me yet, I'm a first-year medical student at University of Manchester, soon to be second year, and I'm today joined by my good friend Anthony Tang, who's also a first-year medical student at University of Manchester and soon to be moving to second year with me. So we just want to today. The date of the recording today is 4th of June, and so we just finished our first year at University of Manchester, and I thought it would just be really interesting for us to talk about our experience overall. I guess anything we'll just start with kind of what made you choose kind of medicine in the first place.
I think for medicine, I'm always interested in something clinical, so anything in the clinical field. But then I think in high school, I start to think more about what sort of role in the clinical field do I actually want to be in. And I think in medicine, like becoming a doctor, like provides you a lot of opportunities for like leadership and like managing a team as the leader. And I think it's a very challenging but interesting career to pursue. And also a lot of people would think like doctors is like the pinnacle of medicine. So yeah, that's why I want to do medicine.
Okay. And I guess so this is actually your second degree, right? Do you want to talk about maybe what you did before this and
So my first degree is actually in biomedical sciences. So I did 3 years of biomed in the University of Manchester before doing medicine now. So yeah, I'm like a grad student in medicine right now.
What were kind of your expectations, I think, going into medicine this year, and what has been quite like how has it just reality been kind of compared to what you were thinking?
I think overall it's quite similar to what I was expecting. I know it's going to be quite hardcore. I know there will be quite a lot of competition in terms of like result wise, and I think but the overall environment in medical school is actually quite collaborative, I would say. And you can work with friends in terms of like practicing your clinical skills or even just studying all the sciences in general. So I think it's quite a good experience so far. Yeah.
What would you say to someone who are like in our shoes where we both did a degree first and they're thinking about doing medicine now? I mean, it's any advice, I guess?
I would say never too late. I guess you can always join medicine at almost any age. I know a lot of people that are quite a lot older than we are, but still join medicine at different stages of their life. So I think never too late, and also like be prepared, because the competition of getting into medicine as a graduate is quite cutthroat. So be prepared.
I guess I feel like for people watching this, they might want to really know about what exactly like the day-to-day like for us like in medical school and because I think it like could you just provide a bit of an insight to what is it like?
So day-to-day wise, it can change quite a bit, depends on what you have in the day. So I guess the most hardcore day for us is I think Friday. So
let's start on Monday and then like work our way through.
Okay, Monday.
Yeah.
So Monday we have something called case opening. It's like in 9 a.m. So it's like general overview of the entire topic of the week, so that you have some cases. Sometimes you have a bit of performance, in the case opening. So you just have an overview of like what exactly you have to learn during the week, or what sort of objective you have in terms of science wise, in terms of clinical skills wise. In terms of something we emphasize a lot called BSS, so it's the psychology and behavioral science wise, which is also very important in medicine, But yeah. So we just know like what sort of topics are we going through in the week.
And then I guess I don't know about you, but I guess because you were in the University of Manchester and you had spoken to some people, I think you had more of a grasp of what problem-based learning looked like, whereas I think it was really different from what I expected. So we actually like you still get lectures, so the case opening kind of starts on Monday and then they release the learning objectives on. So there's a list of your learning agendas, and then there will be basically we'll have lectures to support that, and then there are also anatomy tutorials where you work with the tutor to go over the anatomy that week, and then you get a session in the dissection room to work with like cadavers or models, and then we also have consultation skill. So each week, so we work with simulated patients. They're hired actors to act as our patient and to help us work on it. And then I guess the main thing is they call it TBL, like team based learning.
Team based learning.
Yeah. How have you found I guess problem based learning in general, and how is it? Because you've done a degree where I guess it's more lecture based, and then moving. Like, how has it been different? Yeah,
I'll say personally, I quite enjoy TBL, not particularly about the team part of things, because it is called TBL, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of individual assessment as well. So, but I just feel like in a team-based learning environment, you get to assess your level at the very end of the week. So that's probably your first assessment of your ability, and then you can discuss with your group, talk about what you know or what you think you know about that topic, and then they can share their experience and opinion as well. So I think is a decent chance for everybody to reflect on what you have learned throughout the week. So yeah, decent.
Yeah, but I think in medical school is a place where you have to discover your learning style. It's not like high school where you just you go to class and you do your homework or you do your questions, and then everything asked on the exams are basically kind of what is taught. Whereas
yes, very different.
Yeah. Do you want to just maybe talk a bit more in depth about your particular learning style and I guess your advice to someone who is entering medical school next year?
So I think the main differences between in learning in high school versus in medical school is, in medical school they wouldn't tell you all of the content that you need to know, but almost it's like you need to gauge how deep you want to delve into some topics, or how broad you want to cover your topic. So it is more about understanding the expectation of both the medical school and yourself as well, like how well I expect myself to perform. So if you are aiming for like a pass, probably you don't have to cover as much content or as deep as someone that's aiming for like let's say distinction. So it's important to understand how you want to position yourself within medical school. And also is the reality of being in uni in general is there's a lot of self-learning, and you have to do a lot of, or the main part of learning is done by yourself, either online, through textbooks, videos, whatever media you prefer using.
What do you personally use?
So I don't attend physical lectures. I usually go through the lecture recording afterwards, in a slightly faster pace, so that I could save a bit of time. And then usually there will be some gaps in terms of the clinical reasoning or the scientific reasoning within the lectures. Then I will use like online resources in order to plug all those holes. Sometimes I use ChatGPT, or some more difficult scientific concept. I might look at original papers. And also I think a lot of YouTube videos is very condensed and good to supplement your medical school learning as well. So I use all of those, and then I will put like a list of questions in a software that a lot of medical students use called Notion. And then it's just like it's almost like an organization tool for me to put in a question asking the topics that I want to assess myself on, so I can have a clear list of stuff that I have to go through every time I revise. And then in terms of like the more practical or like exam based preparation, I use a software or like a data bank or like a question bank called Past Medicine, which is I think is really good because of the clinical focus. Yeah, I think overall I use like a whole host of resources.
Would you say there's no one set way to learn. Like everybody you just kind of find one that works for you.
I think it's very individually focused. Like something that works for me might not work for you.
Yeah.
Like I know you study quite differently than I do.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you study as well?
Yeah, like I mean because I did a chemistry degree before this, and I think basically the learning style was very different. It was a lot more practicing questions and applying what you learned. But so I really struggled. I think I really struggled at first. So this is more specific to Manchester. I don't know how other uni does it, but when we started with all the learning agendas, I would just plug in all the learning agendas into ChatGPT and then learn it one by one. But what I find is you're not learning for example, we're doing embryology, and then you're not learning embryology like as a whole, as a system, whereas you're just trying to tick off all the learning agendas. So all your knowledge becomes really fragmented. Yeah. And I started with, because I've seen so many videos on YouTube talking about how written notes doesn't help. So I just started with only Anki. Yeah. And I guess throughout the year you realize that only Anki doesn't really work because it's so much just fact recall that you're not piecing everything together. So if a question is asked slightly differently, or is testing more of your understanding as a whole, and if it just put in a different context, you can often find yourself not being able to answer the question. Yeah. So I think we discussed it, and then I eventually moved to using mind map. So I use XMind. It's a really good mind map website. I think it's on a subscription base. I'm not sponsored by them. I just like using it. And so what I found is using mind map helps me just again visualize everything together, and then you can put arrows down and stuff so you understand the relationship between things. And then after that, then I'll make the Anki out of the mind maps, but then it'll just be helping me recall. But I know you barely use Anki actually, is that right?
Yeah. So for me, I think Anki is a great software for a very specific reason. So it's like factual recall. But I think in medicine, there's so much understanding the network or the relationship between facts. So I would probably say the relationship between facts is more important than the fact itself. So that's why I barely use any Anki. I still use Anki for anatomy, like more factual recall, topics. But for the science part, probably I use a slightly different approach.
Yeah. I mean, I think that approach is. I think we can both agree that so we had a written exam in December and then May, and then we had our first OSCE, or what we call it CCA, practical exams, and I think that really changed our view on how to study for anatomy going forward. Do you want to just maybe speak more about that?
Yeah, at the start, so in the first semester we have a quite insane amount of upper limb anatomy to study, and at that time I'm just blindly memorizing all the name of the muscles, all the origin, insertion, action, nerve innervation for the muscles. So that's individual facts of each muscles. But then, going into prepping for OSCE or CCA in Manchester, we just figured visualization is a lot more important than we have previously expected. And, moving forward, I guess we both are going to use a lot more virtual models, something called complete anatomy. I think if you're in medical school, you probably know. It's like a virtual skeleton where you can add all the muscles, all the other organs structure into the bare skeleton, and it just allows you to visualize the relative position of the muscles a lot better. So I guess moving forward, we're just gonna sort of memorize it less, but more understanding where the muscle actually is and what's the relationship between the muscles and surrounding structures or tissues.
Yeah, because the exam kind of runs where you actually have access to all the cadavers and the skeleton models. Yeah. So you don't actually need to memorize. You don't need to go from blank, So you actually have those to help you. So I would say, after we found out that's how it works, I realized I use way too much like graphics online from teaching anatomy where everything is really colorful. But if you actually watch a YouTube video on dissection, you realize that all the muscles, they look, you know, pink slash red, and you know,
It looks the same.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're not color in different colors to help you identify them. So I would say like definitely next year going into year 2, I'm using a lot more dissection videos and a lot more complete anatomy where I would maybe ask myself, okay, can you find a particular muscle, for example, that does wrist adduction and flexion, and then I'll find it on the model. But instead of just coming, like I can use a visual aid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Certainly.
How do you maybe just talk about what kind of other like what do OSCE kind of entail, and how did you prepare for them? Yeah.
So OSCE is like, or CCA in Manchester is a very broad exam which includes anatomy and some of your clinical skills as well as your consultation skills. So it covers a quite wide range of skills that you need as a doctor. And I guess for clinical skills, such as like taking blood pressure, you know, teaching the patient how to use like an inhaler for asthma. So all those skills, you can sort of practice it with your friend. And I think it's very important to actually practice with your friend, to say it out loud to somebody else instead of just trying to, you know, talk to yourself or talk to like plushies, you know. It's extremely important to practice to an actual human, because the interaction can change quite massively. And then having that sort of interaction and the repetition of the practice does help you a lot in the exam.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we practice almost every day when we were taking each other's blood pressure. And then I guess outside of the skills you mentioned, there's also so I guess that's falls under, is it phys form? What is it? Is it physical?
It's called physiology and pharmacology, but it's actually more about, you know, actual clinical hard skills. Yeah.
And then the other part is CSLC, so that's like consultation skills, and that is has some hard skills, but also a lot more softer skills. And that's, I think it's also just comes with so much practice. Like you really need to be practicing, because when you have a patient in front of you, it's a really different, like you really need to be able to build a rapport, but at the same time kind of do all the things you need to do under like a certain time limit. For example, we did history taking, which is really just talking, but then do you have maybe you want to talk through maybe some of the cardiovascular and respiratory exams?
So we are taught to do some physical exams. So it's like physical tests you perform on the patient in order to understand either their lung function or their heart function. So there's a lot of, you know, nuance and hard skills where you need to practice a lot in order to fully grasp the technique, because like a physical examination only like lasts for like 6 minutes, but then there's so much component within, you know, the examination, and you have to do it so many times in order to perfect you know, every part of the examination. Like for me, I think I've never realized my like chest expansions that's part of the respiratory physical examination is not ideal until the last day before my OSCEs. So it just shows like how many steps you can potentially missed or like misperformed. So that's why you have to practice loads in order to get it all right.
I think that's a pretty hard one also, because you're not just doing something, like you're doing your examination on a patient, so you also need to, like, your communication skill is also very important. You need to walk them through it, but you can't just blurb out what you're thinking, because you're thinking in a more medical term, like you're thinking very professionally, and then like and you know, you're going to be using jargons in your head, whereas when you're explaining to the patient, then you need to use very common, you know, language, layman terms, and for them to easily understand what exactly you're doing. So it's actually a lot going on, and I think we did so much practice, but I think by the end of it, all of it was kind of just like you're mostly a robot sometimes, you know, in terms of what you're saying. And Yeah, I think, and also I think we both realized how nerve-wracking just like OSCE is.
Yeah, like walking into the station feels completely different from whatever you feel during your practice. Like if you're practicing on your friends, you're very relaxed because you know it's just a practice environment. But then when you heard the clock beep and then like asking you please enter the station, it is so nerve-wracking, and you have to just rely on your practice and your instinct. I think your practice is basically building up your instinct step by step, because without that instinct, it is extremely hard to reason yourself in that situation, because you know the doctor's like staring at you, the patient's staring at you, you're trying to figure out what actually you need to do in order to pass or in order to succeed in any way. So that's why we just have to practice so much.
Yeah, I think besides, like, I think following on what we were talking about exams, kind of going back to the written exams, when I did my first written exam, I thought I failed, and I think it's because exam is medical school. It's just not like what you think it is. It's just there's so much questions that you actually have never seen before, and it's almost like you kind of know but you don't know, and there's an overwhelming amount of it. And I think compared to what I'd experienced before, where if you're in high school, you really study hard, you'll know almost every question that comes up. Could you just talk about, I guess, we've been talking a lot about this behind the scenes on the making educated guesses and being comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think like one very difficult part about like written medical school exam is it involves a lot of educated guess, and the reason behind why we have to guess the question is there's very few questions requiring purely factual recall, and most of them requires quite high level of understanding of the entire topic as well as your clinical reasoning skills. And if you don't actually understand the topic, they can just like switch couple ingredients in the question up, and then you will know nothing about that question. And then a lot of times there will have multiple choice that's actually correct, but some is a better choice than the other, and you really need to reason within yourself why this sort of answer is better than the other. And there will be a lot of like internal tug of war, like, oh, should I choose A, should I choose B, should I choose C? It all looks correct. Yeah, so it's the complexity of medical school, and also like the curriculum is so broad, but then you only have 125 questions within the exam, so the things that they can assess on is very, very narrow, but then sometimes they could assess something that you've never thought they would do. Yeah, it's just like you just need to be prepared that you'll be surprised, so that you're not surprised in a way.
Yeah, I definitely learned that hard way, and chances are you'll do better than what you think you did, because coming out, you'll feel like there's so little questions that you feel 100% like confident on. I think
there's a lot of uncertainties within your answering, even though you've studied very hard. And that's just I would say, even for me, I think more than half of my question involves educated guesses. Like, it's like I don't fully trust that I can get that correctly, but at the same time, I'm partly sure that I can, get it correctly. So there will be a lot of uncertainty, and you sort of have to be comfortable being quite uncertain about how you perform.
I think once you've done your first exam in medical school, you really will understand what Anthony is saying. And I think what I've learned is that I think at first I got quite angry, because I'm like, why is a uni like this? Like, why do they ask all these random questions, or it's just so ambiguous and vague? But you really, when you're seeing a patient every day, when you're a doctor, you are making educated guesses. There's no 100% guarantee your diagnosis and what you think will be correct. So you're always reasoning out what is the most likely diagnosis, what is most likely is going to be the best thing for the patient. And I think once I thought about it that way, I realized, why our exams are like this, because nothing is really certain in medicine. Yeah. Yeah. What would you say is some, I guess, could you name, I mean, depends on how many you want to name, like 1 to 3 advice for someone coming to medical school next year. Yeah.
Advice for new medical student.
Maybe one on just, maybe start with one on just purely more of the studying, on the studying part.
Or studying part.
Yeah.
I would say is a very very old advice, but still make sure you finish the week in the week that you're supposed to do it. You know, I've seen so many of my classmates, lagging behind because they have not done the work last week, and then they try to cram in, 2 weeks of content in 1 week, which never works in medical school, given how much we've been put into. So make sure you're on top of your schedule. Not saying that you need to work, in front of your schedule, but make sure you are on top of your schedule and make sure you plan things out within the week so that you can, finish all the work on time.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think that's really good advice, like staying on. And I guess I have something similar, which is, like in medical school, you really need to be consistent, because maybe 2 weeks or 1 week before your exam, you'll realize most 80% of the work are done every day, little by little bit. You can't make, I mean, maybe in first semester, you can try to make up because you haven't learned that much. But by the third year, like, there's no way you can cram everything, in 2 weeks. And so I think it's a bit of a sacrifice for you to just be really consistent and try to work. It's not like you can't have a day of break, but medicine is one of those courses, I think, that requires most people to be really, really consistent throughout the year, and you'll really thank yourself at the end of the term that you've done that work ahead. And I would say, I guess another advice on more on the studying tips is just, I mean, I think you had a very good studying system figured out.
Yeah.
I think most people will be like me, where you have no idea. And I think it's okay to experiment, and it's okay to feel very frustrated, because it is very frustrating, because it'll be the first time you're in a kind of a degree where there's no boundaries. There's very little guidance on what you need to learn. There's very little guidance on how you need to learn.
Yeah.
And those are very difficult things to figure out, even for someone that has done a chemistry degree. And, like, that is a very difficult thing to figure out. So take your time and just, I'll say, try out different things.
Yeah.
And you'll find one that works for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say actually try more techniques. Try more than you think you need. Because at times you would never thought like a technique would suit you that well. Because I might, like, back in the biomed days, I used to just stick to my handwritten notes, and it works fine for the first year. But in my second year, like, the amount is so insane that I can't physically write out all my notes. So that I try to figure out, like, new ways of learning, and I end up using Notion, which is like the software I just mentioned. But it's just take the courage to experiment with different techniques, because a lot of times you need to change up your study style as time goes by. A style that suits you in high school doesn't mean that it suits you in medical school. A system that suits you in the preclinical years might not suit you in the clinical years. So it's all about being flexible and adapting to the challenge or the focus in hand.
Now switching on maybe from more of a just purely studying to more, I guess, the mental side of things. I think medicine can be very mentally challenging, and we haven't really even experienced the most mentally challenging part, which is, I guess, in clinical years and in hospitals. But I think just for first year, what would you say as advice for someone, I guess, like, to prepare them more, like, just any kind of advice more on the mentality side of things?
So I think, like, mentality side, I think is almost always linked to how well you prepared about something. So I've seen a lot of people with imposter syndrome. So, like, you think you don't deserve to be here, and even I feel that way before as well. And I guess the only way that you can sort of convince yourself that you're good enough to be here is through your own actions. Prove it to yourself. Like, I'm consistently doing work every day for a good amount, and I'm usually on top of my work for the most part of the year. It just means that I'm able to survive here, and I'm capable of being here as well. So I feel like in order to take the imposter syndrome away, make sure you prove it to yourself. So it's back to like consistent work, good schedule, good timetabling.
Yeah. I think to add on to that, I would say one thing I think that helped me a lot, because I think you came in quite feeling relatively confident, I think.
Yeah.
Because of like you did a biomed degree, and I think you had a very like what you studied was quite similar to what we're learning now in some ways, and I think I wasn't like that. So I think looking back, actually, I think one thing I would do is because in the first 4 to 8 weeks I really struggled, and I think because I realized I was doing a lot, I was putting a lot of work in, but it wasn't translating to my performance in like TBL, where every week on Friday you get 10 multiple choice questions.
Yeah.
It's not a lot, but it definitely, and some application exercise, but it definitely kind of just it gives you a gauge of where you're at. And I'm very grateful that we not only have that, but we have our Islam Society, so they're kind of older students that prepare like MCQs for us. We also have ACMS, that's another society that does MCQs on Thursday. So if you're into that, it's definitely really good to join. I think I think using those are actually a very good way for you to gauge how efficient and how well your current study technique is doing. And I think if I had done that earlier at the start, it would have made me switch out from my old kind of study technique a lot faster, because I'll realize what was working and what wasn't. So I think expect yourself to be experimenting a lot. At the start. Yeah. And I think we're kind of notoriously known for being super like competitive. What is some advice on, I guess, navigating that competition in medical school?
I would say being competitive is okay, and I guess every single medical student are pretty competitive, being in our sport. But then I guess we also need to know what is a more positive competitiveness and more negative competitiveness. So I've seen a lot of people, that are very competitive. They're always like bashing on themselves. So like, oh, I could have done this one better. Why my performance so horrendous, even if it's not actually. So I feel like it's important to understand your own weaknesses, but also you need to be objective about assessing your ability. It's okay to focus on your weakness, but then you also have a lot of good things done, and you need to be able to see that in order to maintain a good, mentality or like good mental health, to make sure like I'm actually not that bad, but it's just because I am being very competitive and I'm looking at the negative stuff that makes me that shows the illusion, of like not being enough, against another people.
Yeah, it's really easy to be negative, I think, in medicine, because it's so competitive, and there's only one person that can be at the top for that particular exam. They might not even be on the top for all exams and whatever. And I mean, for our uni, we have like 400 something students. That's just our uni as well. And I mean, I think for me as well, it's definitely easy to fall into the negative mindset when you're comparing yourself to someone else who's doing very well, and I think this is not just with medicine. This is really with any industry.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a, people do put out some people would try to put out a very kind of nonchalant, very chill.
Yeah.
They're like partying all the time. They're like, oh, I didn't study at all, or like I'm just aiming for a low pass, but they end up doing very, very well. And because everybody, a lot of people are very, very competitive. They do things like that to kind of try to throw you off and to make you think that they're doing so well without doing much work. And I think that could really make you feel like to discredit yourself and with the amount of work you're doing. But I think I found that usually that's just not true. Like they're probably working really hard, but they just don't want you to know about it. And so I would say it's really important, I guess, to have a healthy competition with other people, but also like I think try to make that mostly about yourself, because no one else can really affect, like you're taking an exam on your own. No one else can really affect how you're doing on your exams. And I feel like as long as you're making good progress, that's good, because medicine is such a long career and it's all about progressing little by little and being consistent. Like you don't want to burn out. Some people can do very, very well first term and do very, very horrible in second term because they burnt out. And also medicine is not all just about the exams. It's such a complex degree. You have so much. No one's perfect at everything. There's some people that'll be better at written exams, but not great with dealing with patients, whereas there'll be the other way around.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to set that you'll have shortcomings and you're also your strengths. Yeah.
Yes, I think just focus on yourself, I would say. Competition is important. Is you can't really avoid being in the competition, but then your focus can always be more on yourself instead of others. Because I would say that like most medics, they are very, very honest about how much they do, like the work they do and what sort of resources they use. But there are people that will overplay or try to underplay their own effort. But if you're just focusing on yourself or try to focus on yourself, they can't really influence you or affect your mentality that much. And it's more about how good a doctor can you be in the long term, instead of like out of the 100,000 doctors in the UK, where would I be ranked at? Like your own clinical competency is a lot more important than how the system rank you, I would say. So make sure your main focus is on your own performance and your own professional development instead of others. Okay,
I feel like we've done a lot of like the standard questions. I just want maybe I'll throw one out there because this is quite cool. What's a medical school stereotype you found to be totally true or false having going to medical school?
Medical school stereotype. I would say medical school stereotype is there for a reason. I think most of them are quite true, not gonna lie. I would say there's definitely a lot of competition, but at the same time, people are not cutthroat in a way. Like they're not trying to destroy you to be better than you. Like we all work together at some point of the degree. And I guess it's very important to understand, although they might be your competitors, you also need like a good group to survive medical school at the first place.
Yeah. Like you can't, there's a lot of things you can't study by yourself.
Yeah.
So you need to work with other people. Yeah. And I guess like in medical school in any degree, you'll see a variety of different people, and I think it's just I think for you to have a better time, it's really important for you to find people that are like you.
Yeah.
That think like you, and it'll be a very lonely journey if you try to do it all by yourself and you decide to just try to outcompete everybody.
Yeah. But I think one stereotype that I think is quite wrong is a lot of people thought medical student don't socialize.
No.
I think so we might socialize a little bit less than other degree, but then we also enjoy socializing. Yeah, we are also humans. We are also, some of us are teenagers, some of us are like young adults, and we all enjoy socializing. We might not have as much time to socialize in the conventional way as other degree, but certainly we also put in a lot of effort to make sure we have good social life outside of medical school.
What are some of your favorite aspects of living in Manchester?
Favorite aspect of being in Manchester?
It could be the school or like the city.
I would say Manchester as a whole, I'm quite familiar with it. That's my 4th year in living in Manchester. And also, I feel like it's a metropolitan, but it's not a huge city. So a lot of places are very walkable, and I enjoy, walking a little bit more. And also, I would say Manchester has, great Asian food that I enjoyed a lot compared to other cities.
Yeah, we have a lot of Cantonese food.
Yeah.
Mostly, I think, due to the influx of just a lot of Cantonese people from Hong Kong moving to Manchester, it has really, really great food. I also appreciate that because I used to live in London, and I think one thing I like about Manchester is that it's a lot more convenient. It's a lot smaller, and I guess when you're in medical school, you just don't have so much time, and to even reduce your overall commute a day by an hour. Well, for me, like we have friends that are commuting, quite a lot. But yeah, if you're able to live near the uni, like your commute is not that long, which is great. And I think it's also very close to many kind of hiking, like Peak District or Lake District. So I know, I have, and a lot of our friends have taken advantage of that and being able to kind of do like a day hike on the weekend. Yeah. Do you have any kind of like final thoughts you want to add?
Final thoughts?
On anything, yeah.
I'll say to all the high schoolers that are watching, if you enjoy medicine, I guess go for it. It is not as crazy as you thought. It's not as hard as you thought. As long as you know you like medicine and you will enjoy a career in medicine, just go for it and try it. We need, new generations of enthusiastic doctors, I would say.
That's great advice, yeah. And don't be afraid of like failing. I think even if you really fail, it's not your only chance of getting into medical school. Both of us didn't get in our first attempt. I've applied 5 times in total. So, and there's a lot of our friends that are even older than us who have done a degree, then they did foundation year, and then they got in. So, I say even more so in medicine, it's just a career that there's no, a right start date. It just everybody has a different journey, and if you're able to get in, first time, like really, I'll say cherish like the opportunity you get, because for every spot that you get, there's so many people that are getting rejected. Yeah, definitely. They don't get to do that. Yeah. Well, thank you, Anthony, for joining me today on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much as well.
See you next time.
See you.